Good morning. I am going to do a series of readings. I've got 20 books now which are available on Draft Digital, and I've put some links up to those books. On the Grub Street and Exile blog, there's sort of lots of writing that I've done. My writing goes back to 2011 on the web, not counting comments and what have you on comments threads or whatever, which go back a lot longer than that. I've been through a process of kind of distilling down the things that have been bothering me or interested me that I've sort of have dug into in some considerable depth. And this is kind of an abstract biography. It's called Biography of a Poetic Legislator. And I'm going to do the first reading from this, which is a sort of a hybrid book. It's like a text, a reference book to lots of different reading which I've done. And then there's also a collection of poems in here. I have another book here called Naming Usury's Tyranny, and this book is a collection of poems. And then this book, The Anthology of Blame, is a collection of experimental literature, really, many of which are drawn from a lot of Substacks that I did last summer. So we're now in June. This time last year, from April through to July, I set out a full idea of something called the Circle of Blame, and then published a series of books. Biography of a Poetic Legislator was the last of that. The Anthology of Blame was part of that. And then this one, Naming Usury's Tyranny, is from my last 6 months of work, which I've got on order, the print copies of The Conquest of Dowforge, which is about setting up a large language model, which I built to assist in writing an academic paper I did called the Fair Index. And then the Fair Index then led into The Conquest of Dowforge and a couple of novels, etc. But it's sort of a continuous, it's not exactly thinking out loud. I've done my thinking out loud in public for over 15 years on my blogs and what have you. And I've spent the last 2 and a bit years. The first novel that I published was The Conquest of Dow, and The Conquest of Dow I started writing in 2016. I did write full-time for 3 years on that. Then I went back into business and sort of, just left it in my Readsy account. Anyway, so this is the first of a reading, and now I've got this introduction out of the way. I can, I'm just going to do a series of readings of the 20 books on the shelf, and here are the first 3, which I'll start with. Biography of a Poetic Legislator, first edition, book 1, Origins, The Miner's Tale. Thursday summary: Industrial Heritage and the Making of Consciousness. The story begins not with birth, but with the deep geological time of coal seams and the men who descended into darkness to bring light to the world above. Foster Lewis's The Miner's Tale serves as our foundational text, for it is in the mines of South Wales that we find the first formation of a consciousness that would later grapple with the abstract mechanisms of modern finance. In the opening pages of Foster's memoir, we encounter a world where value was tangible, coal hewn from rock, sweat crystallized into wages, community forged in the crucible of shared danger. The miners' cooperative societies, their mutual aid associations, their understanding that individual survival depended on collective solidarity. These were the first lessons in alternative economics, taught not in university lecture halls, but in the lamplight of underground chambers. The biographical subject of our study inherits this tradition, not through direct lineage, but through cultural osmosis, through the stories that permeate the valleys and the songs that echo in the pubs. The transition from physical extraction to financial abstraction becomes the central tension of the intellectual journey we're tracing. Poetic companions, Blake's Jerusalem and Morris's socialist vision. William Blake's Jerusalem provides our first poetic framework. And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green, and was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? But Blake's vision of England, green and pleasant land, stands in stark contrast to the industrial reality of the mining communities. The dark satanic mills are not metaphorical but literal, the pit heads and processing plants that transformed landscape and lives. William Morris extends this vision into practical socialism, his News from Nowhere offering an alternative to industrial capitalism that resonates with the cooperative traditions of the mining communities. Morris's understanding that true wealth lies in meaningful work and community bonds, not in the accumulation of abstract capital, becomes a guiding principle. Biographical arc, the formation of economic consciousness. The young consciousness being formed in this environment learns several crucial lessons. 1. The labour theory of value. Value comes from human effort applied to natural resources. 2. Collective solidarity. Individual welfare depends on community strength. 3. Suspicion of abstraction. Real wealth is tangible, measurable, useful. 4. Cynical thinking. Boom and bust are natural rhythms, not aberrations. These lessons learned not from books but from lived experience and inherited wisdom became the foundation for later critiques of financial capitalism, when our subject encounters the abstractions of modern banking, derivatives, securitization, quantitative easing. The response is visceral. This is not real wealth, but elaborate fiction. The Plantsman, Precognitive Postcards, a prologue. In 3 chapters, being postcards from a journey to the unknown, written before the journey began. The ticket purchase, in which one realizes the train has already left the station. I started writing this because I realized I was locked into a series of events for which I would be subject to the results, but over which I would neither be consulted nor considered. The realization was quite comforting, in the way that discovering you're already falling can be comforting. At least the uncertainty is over. We're all precogs now, not in the Philip K. Dick sense of seeing the future, but in the more mundane sense of recognizing patterns that haven't quite finished repeating themselves. The postcards I'm writing are from a journey that began before I bought the ticket, to destinations that were selected before I knew I was traveling. This blog represents a purchase mentally for my ticket for the ride, a journey I was determined to understand, enjoy, and share some postcards with myself and with others who might be interested, having realized they too may be taking the same train. As with all postcards, some are written more thoughtfully, others are scribbles, but checking in or marking out places to revisit. The train I've discovered runs on a peculiar schedule. It stops at stations that don't appear on any official map: Artificial Scarcity Junction, Planned Obsolescence Central, and the sprawling terminus of systematic abundance suppression. The conductor speaking languages that sound like economics but mean something entirely different. Yeah, so there's a complete bibliography of different sources, and then a selection of various poems which I've written over the years. This one is one of the earlier ones that I wrote. I think I wrote this in about 2012, might have been 2011. It's Celtic Bards Speak Out. And the bards of Wales would not give praises to the conquering Edward. Instead, they spoke words of truth in poem and song, made insolence by violence of the crown, and they were burnt at the stake for the truth they spake. What principality this that burns its priests for speaking truth against the tyrant? The bards of Cymru, Erb, Cornwall, Bretagne, Sintigma and St. Paul's reach out to us across the energy of reincarnated spirit and language, past heroes' deeds and words emulated to assuage. As once the tyrant tribute sought, these new Caesars take all yet offer naught. Once more we offer insolence in poetry, song, rhyme and reason, to tell the truth that's painted its treason. This is another old one, November the 5th. Bonfires, flames and embers. Around the bonfires stand communities. Children burn sparklers and adults candles. Effigies atop the bonfire fear the flames. At the seat of the fire embers accumulate. Dreaming at home communities retire. Slumber hangs over the town. The bonfire smoulders unobserved. Effigies, sparklers and candles, all embers now. Flames lick the skies spectacular. Sparklers delight and perform fleetingly. Candles support but one fragile frame. Embers, wax and magnesia. Calliopesis or magnesia fueled from embers. The health of the embers combustible flames. Who celebrates the embers' endeavors. Who sees the symbiosis of the combustion and the fuel. All fate leads into the embers. All embers fate to blow as dust. All flames from the embers driven. Do the flames celebrate the embers for their finery? So this is what I'm going to read and do a bit more explaining. I've used AI LLM models a lot. I absolutely despise them. I have developed my own local one, etc. And I have found it an incredibly frustrating experience. I'd rather work with a human or a team of human beings and work through individual research efforts, etc. What I've found for my own purposes, in the absence of a large team and in my own sort of peculiar isolation here in Sweden, I've found that it's a poor, the LLMs, this is a poor substitute for human collaboration, etc. But it's a tool that can speed up a process, but you have to watch it like a hawk, because frankly they're not fit for purpose. They've been released way too early, or they've been released in their incomplete and imperfect form for a reason, and the reason being to accumulate market share, then to inshitify the whole process and basically deliver them free, making the user the product, which is the old internet. That's the internet methodology, raison d'etre. That's how technology, the internet, and all the rest has been hijacked against the interests of the community for the interests of a narrow spectrum of global corporations. And then the figureheads of those corporations are people we call billionaires, who claim the laurels and credits for stuff that's usually been gifted them on a plate out of basically military funded intelligence type technology that is basically then privatized for for private gain of an owning class. Now, I'm a capitalist. I'm not a communist or anything like that. I do happen to be an anarchist, but the corporate fascist state, which is with us, which exists. Yes, I do think, and I've beat the jury. I've wanted to believe that Donald Trump, and I wanted even more to believe that Obama before him would be different. Biden, is a non-entity, but those two key figures are so clearly batting for the same side, and they've both let down the world and obviously the American electorate in turn to equal degrees. And if you remember, in the first inauguration, there was all the fuss about who had the biggest crowds and all the rest of it. We're way beyond that. It's basically now, I think it's a really close run thing, who was the biggest disappointment to the most number of people. And they both basically betrayed, they both basically betrayed. Whether they sold out or were already bought when they went in there, that's an open question, or one we can talk about. I've got my own views on that. But anyway, but this one is called Quod erat demonstrandum, QED. Okay, and this was a poem written by Monica, which is basically a vanilla AI that anybody can use. And I asked for a poem along these lines. The reason I'm going to read this one is periodically I get back to a crossroads where a number of strands come together. I feel I've got some clarity and start making connections with lots of human internet accounts rather than bots and all the rest of it, where there's a sort of a congruence of thought. And at those junctures where that clarity emerges, that's when some distraction, a dead cat bounce, a rock thrown in the pond, where there's a need for some distraction to stop people from realizing what their joint causes are. The conflict between individuals that are promoted in the Skinner box that is social media, for instance. And look, I'm going to stop going on, but here we go. So Quod erat demonstrandum, doubling back to make sense of the doubling down, double speak, and double plus good. Beware, thought crime ahead. In this dawning new age, the monetary arrangements crumble and the old social contract fades away. As we navigate this exile in Grub Street, the age of Aquarius reveals the upcoming spring of 2024, where distractions abound, but the core issue remains unchanged. The path of going direct leads to techno-fascist feudalism, with the deceptive themes of climate change, land use, and monetary policy. We revisit the past, recapping and reflecting upon our journey, taking the time to grasp the context and motivation behind spoken words and actions. Going direct unfolds, unveiling the powerful control of BlackRock and the intertwined efforts of Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, and the digital ID agenda. The narrative of climate change dominates the past 30 years, with its control over CO2 emissions, aided by the leverage of carbon currency and credits amidst the absurd circle. Tragedy and hope weaves a tale of a debt deflation and fascist politics, controlled by the monetary tactics of the banking oligarchy. Money power seeks control, its implications veiled in a vision of a union money that deepens the complexities of wealth and power. Into this context emerges a world where the dependencies of the democratic states reveal an underlying truth, one that demands our attention. The journey continues with its intricacies and injustices as we grapple with the calls for peace and the looming spectre of fascism. In the vast tapestry of change, we find echoes of familiar themes and warnings from the past that guide our path forward. Oh, that's interesting. I was going to read this one at the beginning, so I'm going to finish with this one, Crises in Heresy. So this is a poem I wrote rather than asked Monica to write 2 years ago, and I wrote this at around the same time. Crisis in Heresy, 2024. Heresies, skeptical uttered things, usually by heretics, not our type. A black living pest attached to a thought, properly removed by crushing between the thumb and forefinger, taking care to rip the offending critter by the root. As the blood of its misery congeals, I'm reminded of a crown of thorns, breaking the skin, but not the will, of a saviour crucified without cause. Okay, I think that will probably do wrapping up for that one. So if you have been, thanks for listening. And as I say, you'll find links in the description to the 20 books, which I'm going to do some readings from over the next week or so.